Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm Simon Bestwick.
I'm Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No
No
Darkness
darkness.
But
But
Ours.
ours. Okay.
So, once again, we're going to be talking about movies that we enjoyed and trying to, as creators, lift up other creators because it's better to be doing that than to be crabs in the bucket pulling people down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's better not to have crabs generally. I mean,
Yes, and unless you're talking about deep fried soft shell ones, which are actually quite
yeah,
nice.
that's true. That's true.
But
Those ones are
in
great.
other circumstances, while everything eventually becomes crab, let's not be crabs in buckets. Basically,
Exactly. Crab yesterday, crab tomorrow, but never crab today.
absolutely.
Um, so I'm going to start with two movies that essentially are the same movie. And so both of them are called Makai Tensho Samurai Resurrection.
Okay.
One of them is from the 80s, and the other one is from 2003. And both of them tell the same really odd Japanese story. Okay, so if you are familiar at all with Martin Scorsese's Silence, you have some idea of what happened when the Portuguese got to Japan and started converting some people to Christianity, which was nothing good. Because Christianity just seemed like a strange ass religion to it's like Buddhism, sort of understandable. Christianity, what the fuck? You know, a lot of people ended up getting, boiled alive and crucified and stuff like that and martyred in various ways. So okay, so we begin with the Shinobara rebellion, which is spearheaded by a guy named Amaterasu, who is I would say probably a samurai who became Christian. And is leading a whole bunch of Christianized peasants against the shogunate. And strangely enough, this doesn't work out real well for them because, let's face it, they expect God to help them, and that doesn't happen. So instead, a lot of people get crucified. A lot of people get their heads cut off, and and we join Amaterasu in the middle of this. In the 1980s one, he's like literally crucified, and they cut his head off and they put his head on a stake, and then we sort of zoom in on the head, and the head's like, I reject you, God. I embrace the evil snake. I.e. Satan. you know, it's sort of, so he ends up going to hell, making a deal with Satan, and then coming back to life as an evil satanic warlock, who then goes around Japan, making a sort of super team, a sort of satanic Avengers out of people who also have been. Yeah, his opening sally to these people is usually, "Do you have regrets?" It's like they've so the first person he manages to get on his side is a beautiful noble woman who was converted to Christianity and ended up being martyred for it, and also lost her beauty and her love. She's like, I can't believe that I'm dead, and I'm also so ugly. Look at me, I look like a corpse. And he's like, but I can make you look beautiful again. Sorry?
They kind of missed the whole point of Christianity.
I know, this is the thing. I mean, at a certain point, you're like, what kind of a Christian are you, man? It's like you want your cake and eat it too, right? You want your revenge in the world. This is, it's like,
Martyrdom is it's kind of part of the deal that you are expected to, if necessary, embrace a fairly terrible death, or
Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will
etc. Yeah.
repay. You can't, you have to believe in that, because otherwise the evil snake just gets you.
Yeah.
So yeah, brings her back as a hot, sexy demon lady. Brings a monk, a Buddhist monk who is willing to break the precepts of Buddha in order to have sex with ladies and also follow the spear. It's like, between the precepts and the spear, what do you choose? I choose the spear.
It's following the spear in both
Yeah.
cases, really.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
exactly. Brings a guy back to brings an otherwise really famous and well-respected swordsman back as a victim of hell resurrection, because he's always wanted to have a sword fight with his own son, which he can't do in a Japanese cultural sense, because it's ancestor worship, right? So his son would never fight him, and he would never fight his son, But he's like, well, if you bring me back to life from hell, then I could do that. And hilariously, his son, who's this very well-known, semi-legendary swordsman called Jubei, likes the idea. He's like, oh yeah, let's do it. I've always wanted to fight my dad. Both of these movies are demented, operatic, strange. I get the feeling I am too much of a gaijin to completely understand what's going on most of the time, but they're awesome. So either of them would be good. I gotta say, I think I like the older one better, but the newer one has some interesting twists, shall we say? Yeah. So Makai Tensho, Samurai Resurrection.
Both versions.
Yep,
okay,
both
so
versions.
the next one I've got is basically, this is from the department of why the hell did it take me so long to get to see this film, part one, and that is all the way from 1989, Alejandro Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre.
Ah.
Shit, I fucking love this film. Okay, summary. Jeez, I'm gonna try and summarize the plot of this film. Okay, so we start out in a circus.
Why not?
And this little kid, whose dad is the circus strongman stroke ringmaster,
Phoenix, yeah,
bloated lecturer, is his dad, and this woman, this trapeze artist, who's also in her spare time a cult leader in this town. I don't know when circus is supposed to travel, so this makes little sense. But she's supposedly this is about the worship of a girl who was raped and murdered, her arms cut off, and this is this pool of holy blood where she fell, hence Santa Sangre. Yes. Anyway,
it's holy blood! It's holy
blood! The local Monsignor comes, freaks out and says it's heathen, pagan blasphemy, and has the place bulldozed. The mother then catches his dad screwing around yet again, this time with the tattooed lady who is a world-class biatch on wheels, but is a kind of hot redhead who's also extremely bendy, so you can kind of understand the appeal. And she gets it, and she grabs a jar of sulfuric acid, which for some reason is just standing there on a shelf, and throws it over to Daddy's genitals, which are melted, as you do. Father, did I mention he has, as well as being the strongman and the ringmaster, he's also a knife thrower? But he's a knife thrower, so he grabs his knives and whooshing, off come Mummy's arms. Then he staggers outside and slashes his throat. Meanwhile, the kid, Phoenix, who's also a child magician, has been locked in Mum and Dad's caravan with kind of a ringside seat of this whole procedure. While his kind of little childhood sweetheart, this deaf mute performer who's the tattooed lady's adoptive daughter, I think I'm following the trees. Okay, looks on and kind of, helplessly. So meanwhile, he's so we fast forward, and this and the And Phoenix, who's now a grown man, played by Alex Jodorowsky, son of the director, is in a cell at the asylum where he basically crouches naked on top of a pillar, then jumps down, sleeps in the dog basket, and eats raw fish, as you do.
As one does.
As one does. And they eventually kind of put some clothes on him and get him to go out on a day trip, supposedly to see a movie, but someone takes him off to basically see some hookers instead, and he kind of anyway, he basically escapes from the asylum, goes off with his mother, and they do a stage act where he's basically replacing her arms.
Yes, yeah, he stands behind her and does magic with
The murders begin. The tattooed woman gets hacked horribly to death. But then we get a series of murders. Basically, every goddamn time Phoenix starts to like a lady, Mother appears, makes him become her arms, and use his arms to basically kill them.
Yep.
Meanwhile, his childhood sweetheart, all grown up, is trying to find her old boyfriend, Phoenix. And all of this is barely scratching the surface of just how bananas this film is. I mean, I could mention David Lynch as maybe the nearest kind of comparator that I could think of. Although this is David Lynch filming in the skeeviest parts of Mexico City imaginable. It also has an amazing score by Simon Boswell, which is always a bonus in a film. I heartily recommend it. It is a bizarre and crazy movie, and if you think about the plot, I use the term advisedly, in too much detail, it's probably not a good idea to do that. But if you watch it and just basically surrender to the sheer, this bizarre fever dream experience of a film, then I think you'll really enjoy it.
I think one of the things that always stayed with me from watching Santa Sangre was the elephant funeral.
Oh God, yes.
You remember that? Where the elephant suddenly starts to vomit blood out of its trunk and dies, yeah. and they have to. They can't bury it because it's way too large. So they just basically take it all the way out of town to the edge of a cliff and dump it over into what turns out to be a garbage heap that people live in. And then people jump out of the garbage with pans and and knives, and they just cannibalize skeletonize the elephant.
Meat's back on the menu, boys.
Yeah, baby. It's like, thanks for giving us the elephant. So it's probably got something wrong with it, but it doesn't matter. We'll kill it.
I think it's definitely what you might call a Marmite movie.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how many. Again, I don't know for any American listeners. Marmite is a sort of yeast-based vegetable spread, which you had a lot in America. In Britain rather. I don't know if they have it in Canada.
Yeah, they have it in Australia. He just smiled, gave me a Vegemite sandwich.
Exactly, and it's one of those things people either love or absolutely loathe. If you like it, you love it. If you don't, you
yeah, exactly. As something made, as something which is a black spread made of yeast would be. But it is very much a Marmite / Vegemite movie. But you gotta see it. You gotta see it at least once.
Yeah, if it's not for you, you will probably hate it. If it is for you, you will love it. It is very much for me, and I loved it.
Perfect. Okay, so Charlie Steeds is a guy, British, who has made, I think, 30 films in the last 6 years, and he's kind of amazing in a lot of ways. I can't say that every film he's ever made is great, but they're all kind of inventive and nuts, and his work ethic makes me happy. And the most recent thing that has turned up of his on Tubi, although Tubi also has his slightly earlier Lovecraftian film Freeze, which was shot entirely inside a quarry which doubled as Antarctica, is a film called Gods of the Deep.
Okay.
Yes, and so, Gods of the Deep basically is a combination of, I would say, the temple, that
Crazy one about the U-boat.
yeah, crazy one about the U-boat. Yeah, a combination of the temple and various versions of Dagon. Yeah, so it's like, let's go down to the absolute bottom of the floor, absolute bottom of the sea. No, but deeper than usual. It's like even deeper than we know that the deepest part of the ocean is. And down there we will find a giant portal to, I don't know, and we'll go inside and there'll be, ginormous buildings made of stuff and a huge thing lying on the floor, which will then get up and you'll be like, oh God, it's Cthulhu trying to grab our ship. Cthulhu is like a guy in a really kind of amazing suit. But yeah, it's like, and again, I will bet you $5 that he did it in a quarry and that he made look as though everything was underwater. He's really good at putting together physical effects with CG that actually works, with CGI that actually works. He has a bunch of actors that he likes to work with, and most of them are good. I can't tell you that all of them are great, but most of them are good. And one way or the other, it's a rollick. It's it's like maybe an hour 12 long. Perfectly worth your time. So yes, Charlie Steed's Gods of the Deep, and check out Freeze if you want, because it's kind of like The Terror, shoved together with Innsmouth.
Okay, yeah, I'm sold. I'm sold. You can't beat a good Lovecraftian film, and
I believe that, or even a fucked up Lovecraftian film that's still a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I'm kind of kicking myself for not putting Suitable Flesh on.
That I did see, and I agree. Suitable Flesh is great. Joe Lynch, am I right?
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, it was really cool. So I was on Twitter the other day, just to prove that even Elon Musk has not been able to rob Twitter of all joy as an experience. Gabina Iglesias was asking for any horror movies you've seen that you loved, and I responded with my Daniel Church account that I mentioned Suitable. I loved Suitable Flesh. Yeah. And Joe Lynch tweeted a GIF saying, "I love you." That's
nice.
That was
like, you know what? We've been saying this for a while, but there's not enough perversity in horror anymore. There should be a lot more perversity in horror. And Suitable Flesh is as perverse as you can possibly get. It's it's essentially the thing on the doorstep. And so much of it is just watching Heather Graham have the world's best fucking time, having sex with anything that she can get her hands on, and some things that she can't, and maybe being a guy, and maybe being a woman, and maybe being something so old it can't remember what it used to be when it had its own flesh.
Yes, and you also have Barbara Crampton, who is just always utterly wonderful in everything. Yes. And you have the young guy who plays the boy in it, Asa. I can't remember the actor's name.
Asa Wade. He's really good, that dude. I'm definitely going to keep my eye out for him and remember what his name is next time that I...
Yes, do that something, I think. But yes, that's a terrific film. Really, really wonderful little movie. It's written by Dennis Paoli,
Yeah.
who wrote Castle Freak, and I think did he work on Reanimate I'm sure he works on some of Stuart Gordon's other.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very Stuart Gordon. Like,
It is like the
super.
Stuart Gordon film that Stuart Gordon
Never got to make.
was not around to make.
Exactly.
It's almost as if he kind of, sort of took possession of someone else's body to do so. I do think it's kind of nice that they're, by making the protagonists, the main characters of it female, very appropriately taking this Lovecraft narrative and flipping the genders, which is something that the story basically involves anyway. So it's kind of quite appropriate. So yes, we'll probably talk about that a bit more in a future one. But the last one I actually had on my list. So you got a bonus here. You were going to get 5 films flagged up. We were getting 6 now, and this is another one from the department of why the hell did it take me so long to see this film? And it's Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. Holy shit! What a movie. I literally went into this blind because all I really knew about the film, despite this is like a film that's been out for several years now, and has had a fair amount of hoo-ha, but really all I knew about it was the title, and that it was some kind of psychological thriller, stroke horror, stroke whatever movie. And so we sat down, we watched it, we went in blind, and we both absolutely loved it. Kate has not been great at, has struggled to kind of find films that hold her attention, and this absolutely, she was absolutely blown away by it. And so this has a really nice mix as well of these kind of young emerging talents like Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy, with these kind of like veteran kind of actors like Terence Stamp, Rita Tushingham, and in her final role, Diana Rigg. And
of course, let's not forget Matt Smith, having so much fun with his body.
We could take that part of it for granted. Really, that's all he does. He's what he's always doing. So essentially, Thomasin McKenzie plays Ellie, who's a somewhat troubled young woman. She has mental health issues. Her mother had the same thing. So she like her mother, she wants to be a fashion designer. Her mother tried to make a go of that in London, and it didn't work out. But she had a breakdown and eventually committed suicide. And Ellie kind of still sees a ghost from time to time. And anyway, she heads down to London. She rapidly finds that her flatmate is a bitch on wheels and moves out of halls and rents a little bedsit in Soho, which is the decor of which is basically stuck in a time warp to the swinging 60s, which is fine by her because she loves the swinging 60s. That's all the music she listens to. That is everything she loves. She says basically if she could live in any time and place on Earth, she would want it to be Soho in the 60s. And she gets her wish because when the lights go out, she finds herself time slipping into the 60s and reliving the experiences of a young woman called Sandy, who's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who basically comes to Soho to become comes to London to become a singer, and finds herself fairly ruthlessly exploited by a sleazy pimp played by Matt Smith, who essentially, you can have a job at this club. Yes, she's basically dancing along with these. I mean, that's what if you're singing it, if you're performing in a review bar in Soho, there's 9 times out of 10 it's not going to be the kind of gig you've really wanted. But essentially the two kind of start, the past and the present start to bleed into one another, and she's trying to figure out, she's essentially trying to find out what happened to Sandy and hopefully not share the same fate. There are some great twists and turns in this. There's something of a giallo in this. There's something of a Hitchcock movie. There's something of a ghost story.
Very much.
Mark Kermode described this as Peeping Tom's Midnight Garden, which is a wonderful description. There is that thing of like, as in Tom's Midnight Garden, of at night, it becomes a gateway to another time, another place. At the same time, yes, it's they're made of like a
and that thing of the glamour of sleaze. Things that seem very, very glamorous, and then later you're sort of like, oh wait, no, that's not good.
Yeah,
There's so much to love about it, and I think one of the reasons that people reacted badly to it is that it is very much it's a piece of style. It is
yeah.
absolutely, I decided I was going to stick these three things that I love together, and but what the fuck is wrong with that? I
Absolutely nothing. I thought it was brilliant. I think, I mean, I've never not enjoyed an Edgar Wright movie. I
It's
loved
true.
Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and I actually really liked The World's End.
Mm,
I thought it was a bit, it was less of a piece with the first two Cornetto films, which are very much Simon Pegg's kind of almost everyman kind of
yeah,
character, having lots of love, having lots of fun with the tropes and riffs of a of the zombie movie, of the hard boy, of the cop thriller, sort of the Americanized cop thriller, but set in rural England. Um, but the World's End is something very different, and his character and his performance in that are something very different. And it's got the Sisters of Mercy on the soundtrack, so god damn it, I absolutely loved it. Baby Driver was a really really enjoyable thriller, but to me, Last Night in Soho, that is,
yeah,
it's his. I think this is the best thing. This is his best film yet. I think it's the most sort of innovative, the most original. It's got the most depth and substance and originality to it. I absolutely loved it. I don't think it actually did very well commercially, did it?
no, I
Which
don't think
I'm
it did.
astonished
Um,
by. But then again, it's a good film, so if it had been about a bunch of superheroes, beating the crap out of each other in space or something, it would
I,
probably have it would
I
probably have.
think that it's very difficult to tell what's going to do well these days, for a bunch of different
This is true.
reasons.
This is true.
But one way or the other, I mean, it's niche.
Yeah.
It's an intersection of niches, and that's making like a mega niche.
And I can't believe I'd never heard. I mean, the actual song "Last Night in Soho" by, oh god, the name is such a tongue. It's Dave D. Dozy Beaky Mick and Titch, which is possibly one of the reasons I've not heard of it, because you try saying that three times fast. You try
Yeah.
remembering it, you know. But that song is absolutely fantastic. I was
Well,
like, where has this
remember
song been
that
all my
a
life?
song by them is key in Death Proof by
Okay,
Tarantino. Yes.
excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. Everyone's Hollywood's favorite foot fetishist there. Um,
Exactly.
So yeah, I just have to get back to that one as well.
Yeah,
Um,
you gotta.
so
It's a lot of fun.
so yeah, but Last Night in Soho, definitely anyone. I mean, as I say, I'm late to every goddamn party as ever. It took me 3 years after its release to come and watch it, but yeah, I do love the way that, as well as everything else, it kind of casts three of these iconic six actors. I mean, all of them, especially Diana Rigg, had have had all had gone on to have quite illustrious and prolonged and lasting careers of their own. But I mean, we're all very much. I mean, Diana Rigg, perhaps most of all, the
Yeah.
original, Mrs. Emma Peel from the Avengers. Um, there's a kind of element almost of coming full circle in that being her
Yeah.
final role, and
Yeah, that's
it's such
true.
a
I mean,
fantastic
it's a
story.
callback, but it's also a really nicely observed character piece.
Yeah, I mean, she was an actress who just did was doing amazing work up until the end. I mean, she absolutely ruled in Game of Thrones.
Yep.
God, I mean, her final scene was just such a, even tell Cersei it was me. I want her to know. Whoa! Which I didn't actually get that meme until I saw that episode. There was a picture of her. It said, "I promise I'm not going. Me, I promise I'm not going to say anything too savage. One drink later," and it was just a picture of Olenna Tyrell. So yeah, it is just a perfect final performance. There were so many great actors who you see in kind of their last roles, and it's such, and you see such it's such a come down from them. You see
Yeah.
how ill they are. You see how how kind of what how they're basically performing in roles that really are
Yeah.
far beneath them. But no, she went
Yeah.
out on a real high. She went out on an amazing performance,
I agree.
um,
I agree.
and a class act. From right from the first to the last, as always.
Okay. There are there's one more thing that I wanted to.
Why not?
Okay, all right. And this too is a film that's been out for a little while, which I reappraised again because of House of the Dragon, because it contains this amazing performance by the girl who plays Alicent, the older version of Alicent in House of the Dragon. And it is a film called The Limehouse Golem.
Oh, yes, that's Bill Nighy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And so, Peter Ackroyd's Dan Leno and the Limehouse Golem is a novel that I enjoy a lot. It's got everything that I like. A super unreliable narrator, horrible murders, history, theater, specifically vaudeville, or music hall rather, and a very interesting use of, for example, the fact that a whole bunch of people who go on to be very historically significant happen to be essentially kind of living inside the London Reading Library at a particular time during the 1880s. Yeah. The Limehouse Golem is an amazingly well-made version of that story. It pares it down in some ways, but it also takes certain aspects of the book and makes them more obvious. And one way or the other, it keeps you guessing. It is a gory, strange, gothic murder mystery about murder considered as one of the fine arts. Very, very worth your time. And very, very worth your time in terms of, again, of the performances. I'm not going to go much further into it because there's some twists that you won't see coming.
I remember that. It's been a good few. When did that film come out? It's been a good few years. I remember seeing it.
Yeah, it's been a good few years. I didn't even know it existed until it popped up on Netflix, and that was about 2 years ago. And now it's back on TV again. So,
I definitely remember seeing it and really liking it. So
yes,
possibly a good time to have another watch of it.
Exactly.
So there you have it, folks. So the following films:
Makai Tensho, Samurai Resurrection, either the one from the 80s or the one from 2003. Either is good. Both are crazy.
Alejandro Jodorowsky's Santa Sangre.
Mm-hmm. Charlie Steeds's Gods of the Deep, and possibly Freeze. We went on a side track into Joe Lynch's Suitable Flesh.
Yep, which we both love. Yeah. And Last Night in Soho by Edgar Wright, which is amazing.
And The Limehouse Golem.
And The Limehouse Golem. They are all worth your time. So we will be back with more stuff to talk about in the very near future, lowering the tone of the conversation as always, once again.
Yes.
But until then, I have been Simon Bestwood.
And I remain Gemma Files, and this, of course, is No Darkness, but Ours.